Doing master studies of art that you love is an amazing learning tool. It's a great excuse to watch more movies and study your own personal responses to the art that inspires you. So in this series, I'm going to take the work I personally love and show you how I would approach them for previs and 3D animation. Today's study is a shot from Kendrick Lamar's Humble. Alright, let's take a look at one of my favorite shots from this music video and break this down before we hop into Maya. As you notice, the camera is being operated by a robotic rig. It's not on a tripod or on a track or someone running to each position, and each move is happening on beat or on every hey in the song. And even though each move from the rig is traveling on beat, the different framing and movements provide texture and overall keeps this whole entire shot entertaining. It's probably the magic sauce to why this shot is pretty mesmerizing. Another noticeable note here is that Kendrick stays in one spot, in one pose, and only follows the camera just using his head. Typically the actor is the one that's leading and the camera, or us as the audience, are the ones that's just following along for the ride. But in this case, it's the opposite. It's the camera that's leading the action and Kendrick is trying to keep up with the camera. Now let's talk about the little details. Even though the camera is mounted to a rig, there's a bit of shaking and overlapping action happening when the camera settles into its position. It's the most apparent in this third move here, with the most shakes than the rest of them. I love these little natural details because it gives us an opportunity to keep the shot from being dictated by the computer. My overall philosophy when it comes to animating CG cameras is to always keep the camera grounded in reality. Usually in the beginning of set building, I'm only focused on just the big picture. I'm only grabbing the necessary assets that I need for the shot. In this scene, I'm using Cargo Pro from Kitbash 3D to help build the set. I can just search for any model I need and quickly import it. Now there's a few details I want to be sure to include for now, such as the cart being on the ground here. And since I don't have any crowd resources currently, I'm just going to dress up the scene to fill the space behind our character. I'm going to quickly dress this up just for speed. I want to get to animating as soon as possible, so I'm only going to grab what I feel like I need. Once I'm in the polishing stage, then I'll come back in and build it further. Since we're only focusing on studying cinematography in this series, I'm only just going to roughly block out the character. I won't be focusing on polishing the character animation or the lip sync. This series will only focus on cinematography in 3D. Since this shot is essentially pose to pose, I'm going to animate in pose to pose. And as you can see, I'm animating in spline and not stepped, and it's only just personal preference. I personally love animating energy and movement, so I basically just live in the graph editor, usually always animating in spline. Since this is just super rough blocking, I'm going to leave out lip sync. We don't normally have to worry about that in previs and layout unless it really helps sell the story. And just for this camera study, we'll just leave it out and only focus on hitting the right pose at the right time. Now that we have our base scene ready to go, let's finally hop into the study. But first, let's take a look back at our main notes. We want a robotic arm-like movement with those shaky details. The movement is happening on each, and the camera needs to lead the character's movement. I'm going to be using a camera rig I made called Cinecam. I built this rig to be able to achieve shots like this easily. You can download it for free, and I have the link for it in the description. Let's hop in and build out the first frame. Kendrick is sitting on the lower screen right of the frame, so I'm going to try and match it as closely as possible. The lens also feels pretty wide, but not too wide, so I'm just going to switch that out for a 25mm as well. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's at least what my eye is catching. I'd probably even consider going to a 30mm. I'll be using an experimental feature I added to this camera rig to help me frame this shot. You go into your camera, and then go to the guide section and turn this on, and now we have a thirds guide in Maya. And now that we got a pretty good start to the first frame, I'm going to animate this camera rig the same way I animated the character, just pose to pose. Since the camera in the study is pretty much moving in a similar way, I'm just going to go ahead and animate this way. I'm going to key only the necessary controls and movement to keep my graph editor as clean as possible. I'm using the timing of the character to help me time the camera animation as well. I'm also focusing on hitting the composition at the same time and using these guides to help frame. Here's the shot now with just basic character blocking and the first pass at the camera. Just watching this back, the shot feels too plain. I have the basic movements in there, but it's missing a lot of that punchiness that the original gives. Even though the camera is on a robot, I still want to add in some ease-ins and ease-outs to help the animation flow a bit smoother, and then also give me the control if I decide to go in and really tweak it later on. I'm also going to adjust the timing a bit more so that we can feel the camera leading the action. Now, let's get into those details. We're going to hop in and do some custom camera shakes. I honestly hate the camera shake function that's pre-installed into Maya. It typically feels unnatural, and I hate that I can't control it any further than just ingesting numbers. So I'm just going to hand key these shakes. You can use the freehand control that's on this rig to be able to do this, but I also have a dedicated shakes control that you can turn on in the camera settings, and this is where I'm going to do it in here instead. I'm going to pin a channel to my graph editor so I can visually see when the camera comes to a complete stop, and then I'll add in the shakes there. I like to think about camera shakes as a bouncing ball, so I'm just going to animate the translate Y for now. So we have this initial shake, and then it's going to ripple out as it settles, so you can see that the curves are getting a lot smaller as it gets towards the end of that animation. But if we play this back, it doesn't look right. We just only have the TY that's going up and down, and it's going at a very consistent rate. But to help push it further, I'm just going to copy these keys and pass them to the rest of the channels. Shakes aren't just happening on translations only. Rotations are also going to be affected as well, even if it's not noticeable. So I like having at least the animation there, and I can push and pull whenever I need to. I'm also going to add in some variations to these curves to make it feel a bit more natural. And now we have a pretty good pass at the study. So I'm going to go in now and take the remainder of the time to do some more polish work to both the camera and the character. What I'm doing here is just adding more variations to the shake and adjusting the composition slightly to get what I'm looking for. But as I watch this back, the camera still doesn't feel as punchy as it feels watching the live action version. I want that same energy, so I'm going to deviate from the study and play around with the speed of these moves to get exactly what I want. Sometimes I notice that just copying studies one-to-one really just only gets you halfway there. When you watch things back, it might still feel a bit laggy, or it just doesn't feel right when you watch it. So I usually take this time to really just dial in and just see exactly what the shot needs to make it feel better, and I'll make the adjustments as I need to. And here's the final result of the study. I love master studies, and I love being able to dissect the how and why certain pieces of work speak to me more than others. This is just the first installment of this series. I'm planning on doing a bunch more, covering a wider array of topics from composition, planning, full scenes with multiple characters, and more. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm going to be posting also some updates to this shot, as well as some other stuff that I'm going to be making in the future up on my Instagram if you would like to follow that as well. I'm also very new at this, so if you have any questions or topics you'd like to learn more of, always feel free to drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching.